Hello all you dystopian loving cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic and today we're going to be reviewing Bioshock the Collection. Now it's something that is fun for me because I never got to review the Bioshock games when they were relevant, and now of course 2K have came out with the Bioshock Collection, which not only holds the remastered versions of Bioshock 1 and Bioshock 2 plus the normal game of Bioshock Infinite, but it also houses the full set of DLC for each game except for the multiplayer, and the developer commentary and interviews talking about the making of the game. So instead of me reviewing one game one by one, I actually get to review the entire trilogy of the games all at once, which is somewhat fun for me and hopefully will be for you too. The Bioshock series for me is a very iconic series, and I don't use that word lightly. It's a series that imbued a sense of story and narrative into an FPS game, when at the time FPSs were very grey and brown and boring and very white bread at the time, because at the time you had Battlefield games and you have Call of Duty games. Now while those games have had certain stories that are somewhat fun in the past, it's never been a particularly narrative driven game, and it's always been a focus on the multiplayer aspect. Bioshock, however, was a streamlined single-player experience throughout each game. It was a game that's core strength lay in its single-player narrative design and not in the multiplayer of some of the trilogy, which frankly the multiplayer aspect of the games was not particularly good. It wasn't a good strength, and frankly it would have been best just to have been left out completely. The remaster of Bioshock 1 and 2 works really well. I'm glad that they've updated the aesthetic and the graphical settings of the game to keep it in view with modern times, and so that more and more people can go revisit the fantastic world of Rapture. I have to say that there were some noticeable issues in Bioshock the original remaster in terms of flickering and little odd graphics. The physics, however, were massively improved, and you had less of the crazy physics imbued funness of the first, where you would shoot an enemy and then they would fly off into the sky. There was less of that. It seemed a lot more grounded in terms of physics. It seemed like the overall physics engine had been improved to a point where the physics were working as intended rather than working if and when they so choose. And while, don't get me wrong, it's certainly nice to revisit Bioshock 1 and Bioshock 2 for any reason, and it's certainly nice to see that those games have been graphically improved to the point where it's a really nice experience. However, there are some noticeable issues. I played the PC version in particular, and even running on a GTX 970, there was noticeable issues, particularly with the lighting effects. Hopefully that is something that 2K can patch out over the coming months, but overall I have to say that I've been pretty impressed with the overall package of the collection. I have to say, if you've never played any Bioshock game whatsoever, then the collection is probably best value for money in terms of not only getting the remastered versions but also getting the third game plus all the DLC packages. Now if you've never played the Bioshock series, essentially it is a first person shooter whereby you have weaponry such as guns, machine guns, etc, but you also have plasmids. Now plasmids are essentially spells whereby you can learn new plasmids and upgrade those plasmids once you've unlocked skill points, and you're able to do fantastic combos and use the environment with those plasmids. So for example, if an enemy is standing in a puddle, use the electric plasmid to shoot the water and they will essentially electrocute to death. As the series progressed mechanically, it certainly got better. 2 was much better mechanically than 1 was in terms of gunplay and core FPS experience, and 3 was slightly better than 2. However, 2 was certainly my favourite in terms of, FPS mechanics alone. For me, however, Bioshock has never been about the FPS mechanics. Yes, it works as an FPS shooter. It works pretty well for the most part, considering all through the games, but it's never been about shooting enemies. Don't get me wrong, firing off electricity and fire and swarms of bugs from your hands and then switching to a machine gun to gun down enemies is never not fun. It's always going to be lots and lots of fun to do that. but that's never been Bioshock's intention. The purpose of Bioshock, its ultimate goal, is to, experience this story, this world that they've created, and it is one of the best video game worlds to date, particularly the first two. I wasn't a big fan of Infinite's story and its setting. It was okay at best. I relatively enjoyed the game. I went through it. It was alright. But it was nowhere near as good as the first two setting, which was, of course, Rapture, the underwater city. Now, Rapture was fantastic. For me personally, the story of the first game trumps any other game in terms of that series. It was better than 2's story. It was better than 3's story, flat out. The antagonist, Andrew Ryan, was a fantastic antagonist and one of the best video game villains to date. One of Bioshock's strongest points is its overall aesthetic, its overall atmosphere, its story, its lore, its overall feel as you play. That sense of this is a dystopian underwater city that is creepy. It's all gone to hell. You walk around a corner and you can see that things have gone on before you arrived, and that sense of not knowing what went on, that sense of there's blood dripping from the walls, who's it from? And it's a psychological game that works really, really well. The best part of the story is that it's a story that is layered. It has multiple things going on, multiple twists and turns, and it's always leaving the player guessing. And that is only the first game story. The second game story, while different, does capture the essence and the atmosphere of the first game. And this is where my problem with the third came in. It never did capture that essence, that atmosphere of the original two. Yes, of course, you can never set a series completely in Rapture. You're eventually going to run into walls and there's going to be nothing left to talk about, so you're going to have to choose a different venue to tell a different story. But this one never ever captured the essence and atmosphere of Bioshock Infinite. Was a completely different ball game, and I always thought that in itself really gave the game and the Ultimate series a little bit of a disservice. I'm not saying it was a bad story, I'm just saying it was so different to what had come before that you felt that, to be honest, it could have been any other franchise. It could have been something completely different. It could have been a new IP. You could have slapped a different name on that and no one would have been the wiser, because no one would have said, oh, well, this is a Bioshock game. Well, not necessarily, not really, other than the fact that it had plasmids. If you took those away and you just had an FPS and slapped a different name on, it could have been anything. It never ever once felt like a Bioshock game. Overall, for me, the Bioshock series is one of the best story-driven FPSs out there still to date. It is a really iconic series that if you have not played, then you need to go out, buy the collection and play it. And for the price of the collection, plus for the fact that you're getting the DLCs and the director's commentary and all the extras imbued in it, it is well worth the price. It is certainly one of my all-time favourite FPS series. Particularly, I have a great deal of admiration for the first and second games, and I wholeheartedly recommend those if you have not experienced them as of yet. There's little else to be said that hasn't already been said in the original reviews of the Bioshock games, and like I say, if you have never tried it, definitely go pick it up. That is my review of the Bioshock collection. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As always, do like, subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you next time.